I'm delighted to be here with John Beckwith, composer, academic, writer, ahead of the release of a recording of one of his choral compositions, All at Once. Thank you very much, John Beckwith, for being with us. Do you enjoy writing choral music?
Well, of course, I enjoy writing any kind of music, really. I never wrote any choral music when I was starting out as a composer, and that's always puzzled me because I sang in choirs when I was a child and after I was grown up, in fact, for a bit, and I'm familiar with the pleasure of singing in a large group of people. So I can't figure that, but it came about because somebody, Elmer Eisler, in fact, whom you'll remember as one of the great Canadian choral conductors, asked me if I would be interested to write something for choir. And nobody had ever asked me before that. It was sometime in the early 60s, early 1960s, a long time ago. So I put together a piece which he premiered, and it was quite successful, and I haven't stopped now and then writing for choirs, and there's quite a pile of stuff now.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your very first experiences of encountering choral music? You said you sang in a choir as a child.
Well, I sang in a church choir and Anglican church, so we sang a lot of the Anglican classics from the 16th, 17th century, and also a lot of 19th century stuff because that's what they always do in church. And so I got used to that, and the choir director also directed, this was in Victoria, which was my hometown, also directed the big local choir, mixed choir, and they did things like Messiah and Mozart Requiem and Brahms Requiem, and the Bach Passions and so on. So I had the experience of doing some of these big pieces. He would bring the boys from the choir into the mixed choir, chorus for some of their performances, and I had that wonderful experience of learning those, solid masterpieces of the repertoire when I was just setting out, and they've never left me behind. It's stuff that I still know and love.
You mentioned your vast body of work for choral forces and opera. Your works have been performed all over the world, and do you still get a buzz from hearing your pieces performed? How do you feel when you
I think all over the world is a bit exaggerated, but I have had some foreign performances as well as local ones. Yes, I enjoy rehearsals almost more than concerts. I enjoy going to a rehearsal and listening to a choir, learning something I've written, and helping them if I can. And so that has been a great experience. I have many great memories of rehearsals and also performances that I have liked, and recordings, of course.
Now, the piece that we're talking about this afternoon is a composition called All at Once. And did you compose the piece all at once for a particular occasion?
Well, yes, it was. My son, Lawrence, was getting married, and he and his bride-to-be asked me if I would write something for their wedding ceremony. And I was very touched that they wanted something, and a piece for four-part vocal ensemble. And I put together, I couldn't think of going after actually a liturgical text. I didn't think that was appropriate or what I wanted to do, and but I tried to look around for a text that would be suitable for a wedding, and I was quite good friends with B.P. Nicol, the poet, and I went to his collection. You know, he died very young. It was a tragic early death. He wasn't yet 50, and but he was very prolific, and in his big poetry collection called the Martyrology, Book 5, there are 9 books actually of the Martyrology, but in Book 5, I found a fragment that I couldn't remember when I went to look it up again, whether it actually dealt with a wedding, but it did deal with a relationship, a couple who were very close. In fact, Nicol and his wife Ellie, and he talks about her not being where he is while he's writing the poem, and how he misses her, and what their relationship has meant in his life. And I thought there was a beautiful stretch. The whole poem is quite long, but I picked out one part where he refers to Ellie, and
I believe you have it right here. Do you want
yes,
to
I
listen?
have it. I looked up the Martyrology. In there are 11 or 12 parts to the Martyrology for Book 5, and I see that Part 10 is the source for the prologue and epilogue of my piece, which is just one long phrase. Well, the one long phrase is a set of words that he's broken up. The words are everything, all at once, together, and forever. 5 words or groups of words. It makes 12 syllables, but he's broken them up. Every, all at, to get, forever, there, once thing. And I imagined the 4 singing voices breaking it up in a similar way, each taking one of those 5 texts. One of them would have to take 2 of them. So that you would sing that all, but not at the same time, and breaking it up so that throughout you would have a held chord. One held chord would be made by the 4 voices joining together. I don't know if I'm making sense to you, but this is what occurred to me to do with that. And of course, composers would sort of start to salivate if they hear it's 12 syllables because of the idea of making that a set of 12 semitones. Well, I didn't want to get that complicated. In an unaccompanied chorus, that's hard, actually. You're putting a big problem in front of unaccompanied voices to give them unaccompanied, highly chromatic stuff, and I didn't think that was appropriate for something at just a little wedding ceremony. Well, important wedding ceremony, but not like a big concert with a huge choir. So I set about making that the prologue and epilogue, and then I took the notes that made those chords and made sets out of them. And the rest of the piece is made through manipulating those sets. In composing, we have the opportunity of looking at a set of notes in the 4 different ways you would look at a document. straight, upside down and backwards, and then just backwards. And by doing that, I had quite a repertoire of sets that I could form the harmony and also the melodic lines of the four voices in the piece. So I find, I didn't remember this, but when I finished the piece, I gave the sketches to my son and new daughter-in-law, and they framed them and hang them on their wall at home, which I'm very flattered. But I borrowed them sketches, and I looked at them again, and I refreshed my memory how I went about putting this piece together, and that's how I did it. The interior main body of the text is simply to share, caring. We have come to value the simplest things. The simplest things reassert themselves: love, passion, honor, make up the will, thrill of living we have found together, each in our own ways. Each seek to carry forward to the end of our days. He elides a lot of those, there are several sentences, but he elides that so that it's a continuous flow, as if it was all one sentence. And that's nice for singing because despite taking breaths here and there, you can give the idea of a continuous flow by having the voices overlap. And so that's how I went about doing it, and they had it as part of the ceremony, which was very nice, and then various choirs and groups of soloists have taken it up. I've had quite a few performances, and I'm very happy you're going to make a recording with your very nice vocal group.
Thank you. Playing through your choral work all at once, it sounds, in terms of the harmony, like a blend of Arvo Pärt and Aaron Copland meet in a bar. I wonder if there are any particular composers that you were listening to at the time, or who has influenced you? I mean, it's really a style of your own, but who were you listening to at the time?
I don't know whether there was another composer that I was interested in. I was brought up on Copland's music. I have never very much appreciated Arvo Pärt for various reasons, but the thing I didn't mention about the sets that formulate themselves from the setting of that prologue and epilogue, they are like there are three transpositions of the three sets, one on a bass note D, one on a bass note E, one on a bass note A. Now the one in the middle on A behaves with no sharps or flats. The one on D behaves with one flat. The one on E behaves with one sharp. Now it's rather like, I'm getting a little technical here, but it's rather like a straight major scale, and it's dominant and subdominant, because when you move from C major to G major, you get one sharp. When you move from C major the other way to F major, you get one flat. So when you listen to the piece, if you're following the score, you see that the first part has no sharps or flats, so it's all rather plain, like C major. And then you get a part that has one sharp, and you get, again, the part with no sharps or flats, and then something with one flat, and then, again, something with no sharps or flats. So it's not all that different from tonal music, but it isn't tonal music. It's formulating chords that are very similar to chords that you'll find in tonal music, but they don't behave the way they would behave in tonal music. How do they behave? The way I want them to. And I can't tell you where that comes from. It comes from my sense of the words and so on.
Can you tell us a little bit about your studies with Nadia Boulanger in Paris?
Oh, yes, I was lucky to have a year studying in Paris with Nadia Boulanger, who was the teacher of many composers who have gone on to make names for themselves. And I was very lucky. She was a wonderful musician and not at all strict with me, although I had heard that she was strict with other pupils. She wasn't strict with me. Our sessions, private sessions, were where I would bring each week whatever I had written, and she would put it up on the piano and play little bits of it and maybe sing a few phrases and tell me what she thought and suggest that maybe I could extend some part or maybe I could change something that didn't quite come off, that kind of thing. Then once a week we had what she called the Mercredi Musical, the musical Wednesdays, which was a big class, maybe 40 students in her studio, and we would sing together classical repertoire or sometimes contemporary repertoire. She was very fond of Stravinsky, so we looked at a lot of Stravinsky scores. And she would talk about the music and we would analyze and also try and sing it. And sometimes we practiced something we were reading and would go and play it at a concert where they wanted a small choir. And so that was a great experience also, exchanging views with other students and also hearing her analyze verbally pieces by Bach. Purcell, it's surprising she knew Purcell quite a lot. Stravinsky, of course, and Berlioz. I don't know what we didn't cover. It was a wonderful experience, really.